Okay, this is the first podcast on the Roman Empire. We got some objectives for you. We're going to discuss the early reign of Rome as an empire, as we see the Republic and a lot of the traditional institutions change radically with the reign of Octavian, later on known as Caesar Augustus. What is the Pax Romana? We need to have a working definition of it, so when I refer to it in class, you know exactly what we're talking about. And what were the benefits and drawbacks of the Pax Romana on the conquered areas? Well, the Pax Romana is basically starting with the reign of Caesar Augustus and usually ending with the reign of the last of what is simply known as the five good emperors, which we'll talk about. It's about a 200-year period of history in which the Roman Empire was pretty good, sort of a golden age of the Roman Empire. So first off, we just have a list here. I'm just going to briefly describe some of these. The benefits, from the empire's perspective or from Rome's perspective. Well, first off, you have money, you have revenue, you have taxes, and you have a uniform currency develop, first under Caesar Augustus, aka Octavian. They can afford the basic necessities in Rome. They can provide for what is a growing unemployed mob within Rome, as many of them abandon the small farms, and we see much larger scale farming going on, and you have a flood of people that need government assistance. You have trade. Many of the areas that are conquered by Rome during this time period, or at least are aligned with them, are going to be able to provide Rome with goods that it didn't have before. The glory of Rome. It's a time period in which many Romans were very proud of being Roman. There is, for the large part, a stability to social classes. Now, during this time period, the one group that is going to lose its authority the most are going to be the plebeians. However, it seems most of the time that the plebeians are accepting of this lack of social class, or social standing, I should say, and we'll discuss that in a future presentation. Civil service. You have the growth of the equestrian order, the publicani, the tax collectors, and when it comes to managing and maintaining this large empire, you're going to see some opportunities for people, particularly in the military service. You are going to have a need to have permanent garrisons, legions, stationed in these provinces. One of the biggest goals of Caesar Augustus when he first returns to Rome after his success in Egypt is his strengthening of the borders of Rome. He's not really looking to expand Rome. From Octavian's perspective, he feels the Roman Empire, they have all the good stuff already. Why do they need to expand? So his focus on strengthening those borders is really going to help a lot of these new social classes that are developing. You get a uniform rule of law that continues. I mean, that's dating back to the Republic, but you're seeing a uniform rule of law over a wide scale. Once again, based on old Greek ideals of Aristotle, and other philosophers that are going to come to eventually influence a lot of Europe and ultimately Western civilization. Now, these are some of the major benefits. Let's highlight a few drawbacks during this Pax Romana. It's so easily characterized as, oh, peace and prosperity for 200 years. It's great. It really wasn't. The vast size, control, and communication is an issue. And ultimately, when you have that much ground to cover, you're going to see a lot of corruption rampant, particularly as you move farther and farther away from Rome. You actually start to see prosperity of some of the provinces rival that of Rome. We can see this in Spain. Spain, as we talked about before, has large mineral deposits, has a lot of raw materials, useful raw materials, I should say. And so there are some areas of Spain that actually start to rival Rome as far as their economic prosperity. And you also have to remember, Rome has a lot of expenses. It's an expensive city. Just to just to run, operate, and maintain. One of the things that Caesar Augustus has to do when he first returns to Rome, besides worrying about maintaining the borders, like I already said, is rebuilding much of Rome's infrastructure that had been ignored for so long during these years of the first and second triumvirates. And now that he's returning, he's got to worry about that as well. All of this is at a high cost. This stuff isn't cheap. It is not cheap to run an empire. When an empire, and we're going to see after the reign of Caesar Augustus, we're going to see programs of expansion. Once you stop expanding, and once you're sort of set with where you are within a country or a city, whatever you're talking about, in this case Rome, it is very hard to maintain rapid growth that Rome, either as a republic or even early on during this time period as an empire, is going to have. Once that rapid growth slows, and you're sort of within your borders, and you see rises in population, you're going to have added expenses. Military garrisons is just one of them. Keeping these people in line and protecting these borders, as more and more people on the fringe of society see how good it is in the Roman provinces, there's going to be increased attacks. That means you need more military support. Oftentimes, Rome is not going to be able to provide this military support. They are going to provide, and this is so key in understanding the fall of Rome, they're going to rely on mercenaries, non-Romans. Gone is that idea of the old citizen soldier, the part-time soldier, full-time farmer. Okay? It's changing, you know. We saw the glory of Rome up here in benefits here, but we sort of lose that sense of that strong bond of citizen soldier, that SPQR, the Senate and People of Rome. That old saying. I'm not going to say it's gone, but it's certainly diminished. They just don't have enough troops. There's a growing feeling of inequity within the provinces. These areas are far, 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 far away from Rome, especially for the ancient world, where travel and communication is very difficult. They are seen as a completely foreign entity. You know, why are they here? And so we're going to have rebellions. Ultimately, gone are, well, not completely gone, but certainly heavily diminished, are the small middle-class farmers. It's a really shrinking middle class. Most economists, whether, you know, whatever their political alliance says, usually believes that a robust middle class is good for the economy. We're not seeing that in Rome so much anymore. We're sort of seeing a corrupt system, which all systems have a certain level of corruption, but a corrupt system where you have certain orders who are becoming extremely influential, and there is a heavy reliance on slavery. Particularly, you have these slaves after all this expansion. Because remember, most of your slaves are going to be prisoners of war, people who resist the coming of Rome. We're going to focus a lot of time on this. The Christian question. It's the best way that I can just preview it for you right now. So we're going to be talking about all these ideas in the future. One of the binding forces, just to preview it for you real quick, one of the binding forces in Rome was the Roman mythology. You can keep your own religion, remember, like we talked about in class. But you have to practice or participate in the Roman festivals. If you're a Christian, you can't do that. Caesar Augustus is the transition. We go from, if you look at the timelines, we go from BC to AD. Well, this is the same time period that Christianity starts to grow. Same time period that the missionary Paul starts to spread ideas of Christianity throughout much of Eastern Rome. And so, you know, what do we do? Do we embrace it? Do they try to stamp it out. Obviously, that doesn't happen. But it's something that Rome's going to have to deal with in the future. Let's do benefits and drawbacks of this time period of the Pax Romana for the provinces, the areas that come under the control of Rome. Well, first off, benefits are pretty much the same. Money, revenue, taxes, they have a uniform currency. This is going to allow increased trade, new products, intricate road systems start to get built, infrastructure improves. All this is based for, Rome's economic gain. But in many areas of these provinces, like I said before, some of them even start to rival Rome. There's an economic benefit by becoming Rome, and also this old idea of the glory of Rome is still in existence. It's changing, and it's definitely diminishing, but it still exists. You have defense against invasions and raids. Roman military garrisons were nothing to sneeze at. Okay, they were very effective. Now they have to go from being a fighting force and a conquering force to one of maintenance, and that gives them a new host of problems to deal with. But overall, you've got military garrisons there for defense. Although remember, many of them were corrupt. Civil service, it's a carrot of citizenship. It's like you're luring in a little fuzzy bunny and you put a carrot in a trap for him. Okay? They give them pass to citizenship. They did this in the Roman Republic, where the more Roman you become, the more rights you have. But there is this process of citizenship, and with civil service, for example, military support, or becoming part of this full-time military, was a way to get there. Uniform rule of law. You can go to provinces. Oftentimes you can keep your own local laws, but there was a uniform Roman law. Now, drawbacks. Corruption. Rampant throughout. The tax collection, the amount that was being collected versus the amount that was actually making it to Rome was pretty lopsided in many cases. So people were faced with heavy taxation. They were not reporting that they were heavily taxing these people. They were going against Roman customs and laws and regulations set up for the provinces, and ultimately it was the people in the provinces that paid. As great as Rome sounds, there's a lot of resistance when they went into the provinces, and we see this in a lot of the sources, and some of the sources I'm going to give you in class. There's definitely an uneven prosperity. It's not just like, oh, great, we're part of Rome, you're going to build our infrastructure, we're going to be taxed fairly, we're going to have new products, new ideas, new governments, great laws, good leadership, all that stuff. It was very uneven. Egypt is an area that prospers. You go into Northern Europe and Eastern Europe, some of those areas, people living day to day on the fringe, trying to escape starvation. Okay? You always have to deal with possible rebellions. I mean, these are a fact of life. There's nothing you can do to get around it. So that's bad. Taxes, like I said, oftentimes they could be unfair. Hey, you're conquered. Violence, death, possible slavery. Typically, if you caused any resistance or did not fully accept Roman law, you could end up in slavery. Or even worse. And besides, oftentimes when you move into an area and you conquer, that means you're fighting. And with fighting, you see destruction of private as well as public property. You see destruction of any sort of fortifications or castles that are built for protection from other outside forces. So there's a whole steeping feeling of problems. Along with that, there's inequity, feelings of it. People realize that, okay, Rome was supposed to be light. We were supposed to have this glory of Rome, and it's just not happening. It was actually better off, before. Once again, it's a drawback. Reliance on slavery. Or before, some of these provinces didn't have it. Once again, Christians are going to rise in population. Rome has to deal with it in the provinces. In the Middle East, like I said before, in the eastern parts of the empire, and eventually throughout most of the empire, they're going to have to come up with some sort of solution to this. They really don't. Alright, that's it for now. For part one, at least, for this Pax Romana, just sort of a brief introduction, what it looks like in the empire and the provinces. Next up, we're going to talk individual emperors, starting with, of course, Octavian. Thanks for listening.